Bonner felt like a moron. This self-assessment occurred to him at a discreet marijuana harvest celebration given by his former partner Fritz on an Indian summer day that came to Big Sur in late October. The afternoon sun cooked the ridgetop where a barn that doubled as Fritz's living quarters, drying house, and product shipping point enjoyed a wide view of the South Monterey County coast. The year before had been Bonner's last growing season. Once the partnership crop was safely sold and the proceeds divided, Bonner had told Fritz, "The project is all yours." When Bonner parked his truck next to the barn, Fritz reached in the side window and handed him a leather pouch with the year embossed on it. "You should put this in a safe place," he said. Bonner could see that it contained a lot of cash. "What's this for?" he asked. "Shut up and take it," said Fritz. With questioning eyes, Bonner turned to his wife, Karis. "Shut up and take it," she said. Karis put the pouch in the glove compartment. "I need a favor," said Fritz. "My daughter Felicity and my soon-to-be son-in-law Calvin are my other guests. He doesn't know how I make a living, and Felicity doesn't want him to. As far as he's concerned, I'm just a caretaker." "I got it," said Bonner. Then he heard a motorcycle engine fire up. "Who's that?" he asked. "Calvin's also in love with my new toy," said Fritz. Once Fritz's brief biography of Calvin Stevenson was concluded, the Bonners followed their host toward a picnic table where Felicity, looking worried, watched Calvin ride a figure-8 course of tight turns and straightaways stitched among low oak trees and granite boulders behind the barn. Back in his Southern California teenage days, Bonner was an up-and-coming competition rider. He might have turned professional if his mother hadn't tossed him out. Bonner could see that Calvin rode good, damn good, a surprise considering that he had an engineering degree and a bunch of patents to his credit. He did smooth uphill wheelies and dominated the machine with a controlled grace. Judging from her expression, Felicity had a different appreciation for Calvin's performance. She clutched her body and moaned with each of Calvin's spectacular maneuvers. When he disappeared into the dust of an uphill turn, she screamed until he reappeared, flying downhill in complete control. Calvin slowed and came to a stop, grinning. "This course is a real gas." Calvin noticed Bonner's eyes traveling over the Honda 4-track. "You know bikes?" he asked. The question brought back memories of a period in Bonner's life when there was nothing more important than how he performed in competition. The races he liked best were called Hare and Hounds. The sponsors would lay out a 100-mile course marked with splashes of plaster through a wide-open Mojave Desert country full of Joshua trees, river washes, and stony canyons. A pistol shot was the signal for a silent line of 1,000 riders to fire up their bikes and go hell-bent in a motorized charge toward a pillar of smoke on the horizon. Soon the stampede narrowed to a mile-long single line, probing the landscape for the white plaster marks of the hare. For Bonner, to ride Hare and Hounds was to willingly enter a nightmare world. He was not only in competition with other riders. He was engaged in a frenzied avoidance of dust-concealed rocks, bluffs, and dead cattle. An attempt to pass meant entering into a thick rooster tail of fine sand, not knowing if the course ahead might go straight, right, or left. Passes into the dust might mean one more place up the line, a crash, or just throttling off the course. Except for pit stops, there were no rests, no pauses. Often after 3 hours, Bonner's clutch hand refused to work, requiring stiff-armed pulls to change gears, and his kidneys became battered victims of the desert terrain. Chasing the marks of the hare was an exertion that only someone under 20 could do Sunday after Sunday. Decades later, Bonner felt the urge again. By then, two-wheel technology had changed. Japanese rice rockets were the norm. His Triumph TR6 and the tradition of English motorcycles had passed. Now they live only in museum displays. When Bonner saw the ad for a weekend motorcycle school, he brimmed with visions of renewal. The school offered 2 days of intensive rider training and a certificate that would tell the DMV that he had passed the equivalent of the rider performance test. If he correctly answered some multiple-choice questions, it would be official. The M1 designation would be typed onto his driver's license. Karras looked puzzled. It's something I've always wanted to do, Bonner explained. So you want to be like those old Harley coots who gas up outside our bar? I wasn't thinking of a Harley, Bonner said. I'd say you're not thinking at all. But Karras, me and the bikes go way back. You and the bikes should stay there, she said. Bonner shook his head. I've got to do it. Trust me. Sunrise was starting time for the writers' school held in the huge parking lot of Gavilan College. Walking among the students, Bonner compared himself to his classmates. At least a third were old Harley coots. The rest were a mix of eager high schoolers, management types, and off-duty cops. Bonner felt like the odd man out. He was the experienced racer who had been sent back to kindergarten. The bike Bonner picked was a street-legal dirt bike, higher off the ground than his TR6 of the old days. As he swung his leg over the seat to mount the bike, a pain shot from his ankle. It had hit the taillight. Either his Levi's had slipped too far below his crotch, or he was a lot shorter than he used to be. Then Bonner noticed another guy mount up. Rather than swing an extended leg over the rear fender, the guy tucked his leg and swung it over the seat. Bonner's next mounting was successful. Some of the handlebar controls looked familiar. Others were foreign. The left-hand clutch and right-hand throttle were in their proper places. But now there were new buttons and switches, an electric starter, a turn indicator, horn and kill switch. Bonner looked down. His right foot no longer touched the gear shift. Now the rear brake lever was in its place. Wouldn't it be a bitch to hit the brake instead of the gear shift at 60 miles an hour? Bonner was impressed with the rider course. What he had to learn from experience years ago now was written down in rules and reminders. Smart riding, the instructors said, required conscious strategies. Search the road ahead. Evaluate the factors creating the risk. Execute riding actions to maintain a margin of safety. A misjudgment of stopping distance, a failure to anticipate what some other moron might do, could have fatal consequences. At first, Bonner wasn't sure that the paranoid style of riding he was being taught was going to be a whole lot of fun. But it had to be fun. It had to be great. It had to be a renewal of the old days. He rationalized that riding after 50 was going to be a mind purge, a kind of motorized spiritual experience that left no time for the chronic worries like cash flow, restaurant kitchen remodel that Karras wanted, the effect of arthritis in his left shoulder, or why it was that he had to pee more often. Riding was going to erase all that, not a consciousness cleansing like the Zen Roshi spoke of, more like a displacement of all other thought by one totally absorbing concern: how you and your bike can safely traverse the next 100 yards. It's going to be a consciousness narrowing that would bring him in immediate touch with his personal environment. Now that's got to be healthy, and a whole lot better than cocaine. Bonner proudly presented his new philosophy and his certificate of course completion to Karras. Don't even think about getting one, she said. I don't want to ride on the street, Bonner argued. It's way too dangerous. I'm an off-road kind of guy. You know, get sideways in the dirt the way I used to. When you were 16, Karras objected. Dirt is a whole lot safer than the street. I could put a bike in the truck and head out to Hollister Hills, where they got off-road trails, a real safe place to ride. With other maniacs like you? No, babe. I have a whole new respect for the concentration it takes to ride a motorcycle. I bet, said Karras. The discussion about Bonner buying a two-wheeled toy had progressed not much beyond that point by the time Calvin Stevenson asked, "You know bikes?" "The two-wheeled kind," said Bonner. "I've never ridden a four-track." "They're a cinch. The throttle's a little different," Calvin demonstrated. "Takes some getting used to." He smiled. "You want to take it around the course?" In Calvin and Fritz's eyes, Bonner saw the empathic permission of fellow riders. In Karras and Felicity's faces, he saw fear. "Sure," said Bonner. The Honda 4-track was fat. Its girth prevented Bonner from hugging the gas tank with his knees, a squeezing gesture that once gave him comfort and a sense of control. Now he felt spread-legged and awkward. The clutch lever welcomed his left hand. He could draw it easily into the handle grip. The throttle, now a small lever beneath his right thumb, was sensitive. The large Honda growled as Bonner grew acquainted with it. He put the Honda in gear, throttled up, and slipped the clutch. The machine lurched forward, throwing him off balance. Readjusting his position, Bonner moved onto Calvin's figure-8 course. Uphill, the machine had good traction. Bonner goosed the throttle in a happy display of rider confidence. Rising up from the seat, he allowed his legs to take up the shock of the bouncing machine. Bonner throttled down into the uphill turn. Once through it, he goosed it again and got sideways, as he had in the old days. He did the downhill straight on compression and eased into the lower left-hand turn. After negotiating it smoothly, the long uphill leg of the course, full of the furrowed reminders of Calvin's spectacular performance, appeared in front of him. Bonner aimed for another left-hand turn at the top of the figure-8 and pressed the throttle to the handlebar. After doing a wheelie, he passed his spectators and ignored Calvin's slow-down gestures. Nope, Bonner was doing just fine for an old hare and hound guy, but his left turn was too fast. The Honda swung wide. Overcorrecting, Bonner got through the turn. To break his downhill run, he pressed his left foot down. Oh, fuck! He'd forgotten the new arrangement. He had just kicked the Honda into a higher gear. Now, without slowing compression, he used all the strength in his arthritic left shoulder to manhandle the machine back into control. His right foot stabbed for the rear brake, skidding the Honda off the course into thick chaparral. Overcompensating again, Bonner crossed the course and sideswiped the branches of a coastal oak. He felt a stinging slap across his face. Still in second gear and now in a mild panic, he seized the handle grips, including the throttle lever. This, he realized, had the unintended consequence of hurling the Honda faster towards some ugly boulders at the end of the figure-8. One of them, big enough to offer ski jump assistance for a flight downhill, came into Bonner's frenzied vision. He knew he had only one option. He leapt. To be in a long, falling flight was a unique experience. Like most one-time high school football players, Bonner knew it was best to tumble once he hit the ground. This thought was accompanied by blurred glimpses of his spectators, the bouncing 4-track, and the bright ocean horizon. He felt himself in slow motion until his hard, wind-sucking landing. After rolling downhill over and over again, Bonner came to rest just in time to see Fritz's 4-track stop in a mangled wreck below him. Now Bonner saw double. There was a foreign presence in his eye. Ignoring it, he wiggled his toes. Satisfied that they were still connected to his brain, he surveyed his legs for the pain of broken bones. Realizing that his arms still worked, Bonner pushed himself into a seated position, just as Calvin knelt down next to him, holding out a hand with 5 fingers spread. "How many?" he asked. 5. Calvin turned to Fritz, who had slid in next to him. "I think he's okay." "Hell yes, I'm okay," said Bonner, struggling to get to his feet. "I'm not convinced," said Fritz, straight-arming him. "Get back down." Karis's tearing face appeared from behind Fritz's shoulder. Shaking her head, she said, "You stupid old fool." Her judgment fell on Bonner like a thick sheet of warm lead. 3 hours later, he was in an ambulance strapped down to a gurney heading north on Highway 1 toward Community Hospital. Back at Fritz's, one of the paramedics said, "Your heart's good. A hell of a lot better than mine, if you must know. No broken bones. You're a lucky man, my friend." Karis was next to him in the ambulance. Bonner took her hand. "What about the Honda?" he asked. "Gone," she said. "I returned all of the money in the pouch to Fritz. All of the $5,000. Bonner closed his eyes. He felt like a moron, and he knew he was alive on borrowed time.